What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose. Thank you for tuning in. There was no post-game rehash this week as we were in Arizona. It wasn't because we got our butts kicked and we didn't want to talk about it because, trust me, we would have, but we were gone. We were flying back from Arizona on Sunday. Didn't get back home till very late on Sunday night. And here we are. I'm recording this on Tuesday. We will still have a podcast out on Thursday. This is just a very short podcast. It's not to go really over the game. It's more my thoughts on this offense and how pathetic and how embarrassing and how bad this offense truly is and why we even got to this point. And so that is what we're going to do today. It's going to be a pretty short and sweet episode. Make sure you look for the later episode coming out on Thursday. Tyler will be back on. We'll probably talk a little bit about the Iowa-Penn State game. You know, we got to flush that game down. We got to move on. I know it's hard to say that because it was such an embarrassing effort, but we got to move on to Michigan State, and so we'll have all that for that. So let's get right to it. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see the screen that I shared, and essentially it's the team stats against Penn State, and I'm just showing this right now because you look at those numbers and you're just saying to yourself, like, how is this even possible? How do we only get 4 first downs? How do we only have 14 minutes of time of possession? And not on ESPN, but how did we only have like 25-ish plays versus like 97 against Penn State? How did we let that happen? And as we sit here today, my biggest takeaway, my biggest thing that I can think of when I'm just looking at this offense is personnel. There is no way, and I'm just talking personnel, I'm just talking the roster. There is no way offensively we are the worst team in Power 5 when it comes to that. Okay, so how many Power 5 teams are there? There's like 65-ish Power 5 teams, give or take. It's like plus or minus a few. There is no way. You cannot tell me from quarterback to running back to wide receiver to tight end to lineman, and I get it, our offensive line is not good, but you cannot tell me right now that we are the worst personnel in Power 5 football, yet we are the worst offense in Power 5 football. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I have the next screen up. And this is looking at team stat rankings for yards per game, which is a pretty good indicator of how good your offense is. And you sit here and you see some of these teams that are Power 5, like Indiana's ahead of us, not by a lot, but they are ahead of us. BYU is ahead of us. Oklahoma State is ahead of us. Rutgers is ahead of us. Iowa State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, right? Northwestern, Minnesota. All these teams are way above us, right? Like all those teams I named off were like in the 330 range. Yet we are at 245. We're the only Power 5 team under 300 total yards per game. So I mentioned all those teams, and those are just a few. Do you really think we have a worse roster offensively than those teams? I will guarantee you, and I'm just going to pick on like Virginia, who is, I believe, has like 1 win this year. Like they're 1-3 or something. They're at 92. They're averaging 333 yards per game, which is about 100 more yards per game than we are averaging. You cannot tell me right now that Virginia has a better roster offensively than we do. Yet they're doing way better. So you look at all those things and you're like, okay, how can that be then? It comes down to coaching. I mean, it's that simple, but it comes down to we just don't have any coaching or coaches on the offensive side that are quote unquote like gurus at that position, that knows what the hell they are doing, that are experts on the offensive side of the ball, that knows how to scheme against defenses, that knows how to make adjustments mid-game or throughout the game, that knows how to get the best playmakers involved every single game and how to develop a good game plan and how to be creative and how to be less predictable. We don't have that. We just don't. We have no coaching or coaches on the offensive side of the ball that knows how to do that and how to be a successful, and I'm really talking Brian Ferentz and Kirk, right? They just don't know what the hell they're doing on offense. And it's so funny. Well, it's not really funny. It's really sad because on the other side of the ball, we do know what the hell we are doing. We have geniuses on the defensive side of the ball. Yet then you flip over to the offense and it's like we have no idea what the hell we are doing. We are making it so difficult. I get it. Football is a difficult game. It's a lot harder than it looks, but we make it extremely difficult. How can some of these teams that are ahead of us, like Northwestern, Virginia, Minnesota, Iowa State, Rutgers, how can they have a better offense? How can they do it? But we can't, because it comes down to those things. It comes down to we just don't have the coaches that know how to scheme against defenses. We don't have the coaches that know how to make adjustments. We don't have the coaches that can make a creative playbook, creative, less predictable, get the best playmakers involved. We just don't have that. We just don't. Here's an example, and I know this is NFL, but this last weekend we saw the Miami Dolphins put up 70 points against the Denver Broncos without their second best wide receiver playing, Jalen Waddle. And I could argue, and maybe you could say, well, they do have the best offense roster in the league, but I would argue that they do not have the best offensive roster in the league in terms of personnel. I just don't think they do. Now they're way up there, but I don't think they're number one. Yet they're putting up, like, once again, 70 points. And right now they're averaging, I think, 40 some points per game so far. I know it's a young season in the NFL. We're only through 3 games, but that's pretty damn good. And how can that be? Well, it's because they have a genius play caller. They have a genius offensive-minded coach, Mike McDaniel. The dude's a stud. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to scheme against defenses. He knows how to get the best playmakers involved. They have Tyreek Hill, who's an absolute stud. He makes sure every single game, if you watch their games, they are finding creative ways to get Tyreek Hill the ball because they know he's their best player. And you get him the ball, good things are going to happen. And look at what they do. They put up 70 points. Now, they're not going to do that every single game, but they're putting up a lot of points almost every single game. And here we are. We sit here, and we just don't know how to do any of that. Okay? And I know, like, for example, like Caleb Brown. I get it. He's young. He's kind of raw, but you cannot tell me that dude is not talented and doesn't have potential. You can't tell me that we can't find ways to give him the ball. Yet here we are. We're 4 games in, and he has yet to have a catch. If you would have told me back in May when we signed him, or not signed him, but when we picked him up in the transfer portal, that after 4 games, he would yet to have a catch, I wouldn't believe you, because it's like, there's no way. I don't know how we sold him to come to Iowa. I don't know how we sell any wide receiver to come to Iowa. I truly thought, and this is embarrassing because it's to the point where it's like, I have to stop believing or thinking that things are going to change. But I really thought that, okay, we're getting these transfer portal players. Things must be really going to be changing, because this is kind of like a do or die. Like, we need to show, we were finally getting these players to come in, but for the future, we need to show people out there that, hey, we are willing to change and we are going to change. And I really thought that there was going to be necessary changes on the offensive side of the ball. And yet it's the same old. And I don't know. I'm really worried about where things are going, because if things don't improve after this season, I just don't see how these wide receivers stay. And I don't see how we can go out and get wide receivers to come play at Iowa, because it's been year after year after year after year of us just not willing or trying to get the wide receivers involved. Kirk Ferentz today, and I pulled this up on Twitter or on X, whatever you want to call it. Kirk Ferentz said today at his press conference, just got done about an hour ago or hour and a half ago, getting receivers more involved makes sense moving forward. That's what he said. It's like, are you kidding me? Well, no shit. It does. Especially after Luke Lachey got hurt first quarter. It makes way more sense to get the wide receivers more involved. My number one thing with the wide receivers, what I don't understand is why we make the route tree so difficult. And what I mean by that is, really think about this. When was the last time we did just like a 5-yard slant to a wide receiver? Something that is really easy and could result in, especially if you have a guy that can make a move or is fast, could result in like a 10-yard, 15-yard gain. When was the last time we did that? When's the last time we threw like an under route where a receiver goes across the middle of the field, like a 5, maybe 7-yard under route, And especially if you're playing man to man, if you can beat your defender, you're going to catch the ball, and, you might be able to make, 10, 15 yards out of it. When's the last time we did that? I remember during the kids' day, one of the first passes was an under route to Seth Anderson that resulted in like a 15, 20-yard gain. Why have we not done that this entire year? And maybe we have. Maybe there's been a play that we've tried doing it and just we didn't execute. I don't know. But we don't do it very often. Why are we not taking more shots downfield? Now, the first game of the season, the second play of the game, we took a shot to Seth Anderson, touchdown. And then that was kind of it for that game. Iowa State game, we tried it against Seth Anderson. He did a double move. If Cade had a better pass, it would have been a 90-yard touchdown. That same game, we threw it out to Devontae Vines. Once again, just kind of not really necessarily a bad throw, but he couldn't get it. And other than that, we really haven't tried to air it downfield. And I don't get it. When we finally have playmakers on this team, and we're just like electing not to do anything with them or for them. And it's very frustrating. It really is. And I just think, like, we sit here today and, you're wondering, like, how can things change? And honestly, like, there are answers, but I just don't think Kirk is like wanting to change. I think he is so stubborn. Another thing that he said today, Kirk Ferentz, and how they can get better in season regarding the offense. He said, just try to get better in every phase. There are no magic answers. It's like, he's not even like wanting. He's not even willing to change. I feel like he's so stuck in his ways. He's so stubborn about it. I love Kirk, but this is like his biggest knock, where he just won't admit that things are not looking good. He can't just say, like, yeah, like, this is bad. And we are one of the only college football teams that continues this nonsense. You cannot tell me that there's other college football programs out there that would keep doubling down on the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach, right? Doubling down on what they're doing. It just wouldn't happen. I mean, look at Wisconsin. What was it? Week 4, week 5 of last year, they fired Paul Chryst, or whatever his name was. Things just were not looking good. And he won a lot of games there, but it was just, you could tell it was starting to get stale up in Madison. What do? They fire him. And everyone thought that Jim Leonard was going to be the next coach, which probably wouldn't have been a bad move. But Wisconsin kind of went out and was like, no, we're going to find someone and we're going to bring like a new life to the program. We're going to go out and get the Cincinnati coach. I can't think of his name right now. It's like, when I'm doing this by myself, it's like sometimes words are hard to come by. Go out and get him. Bring in a new guy, air raid offense, right? Something new. Now, it might not be pretty right away, but we feel like it's going to help us compete against the big boys, especially as we move to a 18-team conference and possibly 2024 down the road, and you're bringing in these Pac-12 teams, and they feel good. And we sit here, and it's been now 3 years where the offense has been absolutely horrible. And you can make the case that it has gotten worse every single year. So right here, I will everywhere put this up, which I love listening to two guys named Chris Hassel, Chris Williams. They had a closer look at Iowa's offensive numbers. Out of 133 teams, total offense is 131st, first downs is 131st, passing offense is 121st, pass plays of 10 plus is 126th, and fumbles is 124th. You could make the case that this offense this year is worse than the offense last year and 2 years ago. Now, I would probably argue that it's probably still a little bit better, because if you look at the first 3 games, like Western Michigan, we put up 41 points. Iowa State on the road, we put up 20, 24 against Utah State. Last year, remember, we couldn't even score against Utah State. Iowa State, we only scored a touchdown. And Nevada was not pretty, but Nevada was really bad. Like, that was a really bad football program. So I would still probably make the case that this offense is still better, but it's like, you look at those numbers, it's like, how can this be? How can this be with a decent transfer quarterback, with some weapons on the outside, with a transfer tight end, with what should be a better offensive line? How can this be? And for me, like I said, going back to what I said 15 minutes ago, comes down to, we have no coach on the offensive side of the ball that is a quote unquote guru, an expert, a genius, someone that just knows how to run a efficient and successful offense and knows what the fuck they're doing. Excuse my language. But that's really what it comes down to. Comes down to that. Also, I want to share this too. I thought this was just like, what the hell? Bud Elliott, I should have had this when I was talking about the wide receivers before. It would have been a good transition, but here we are. Iowa wide receivers have 14 catches this year, which comes out to being like 3 to 4 catches per game in 4 games. Army, a service academy, who runs a triple option where like 95% of the time the receivers are just blocking. They have almost more than double catches compared to us for the wide receivers. 27. How is that even a thing? How is that even a thing? And I said this to Tyler like back in May, I think, when we just did a podcast. I said, we'll know if this is all systematic, if this is all just the Iowa offense with Cade, because Cade wasn't like some all-time great quarterback at Michigan, but he was very efficient and he was decent. He led a team to the college football playoff. Like I said, he wasn't Patrick Mahomes, he wasn't Caleb Williams, right? But he was very, very efficient and he was decent and he put up good numbers. And I said, like, we'll know, because if he looks like shit here at Iowa, if he kind of looks like Spencer Petras, then we know it's all this, the Iowa's offense, Iowa scheme, the system at Iowa, the coaches. You're talking a offensive line coach who should be an offensive line coach who's played and coached that position is now the quarterback's coach. How is that even a thing? This whole thing just doesn't make any sense. And last year I said, we can bring in all these guys, and I thought there was going to be changes, and but even with bringing in like Cade, I still remember back in December when we did a podcast, I said, I still hope that Kirk does something with his son. I know it's hard. It's your son. You love him. Hopefully he at least just, maybe makes him like an analyst for the team. You're not a coach. Maybe you're an analyst, because at the end of the day, like he's not going to get a job if we let him go. And, yeah, so I really was like, I just hope he does something, just make him not offense coordinator anymore. Whatever you have to do, put him back in a position or make him an analyst or just do something, but just do not have him be the offensive coordinator, and go out and find a guy, maybe a younger guy who has a resume that knows what he's doing, and bring in a guy like that. There's so many like teams in like the group of 5, like Mountain West and American, the MAC maybe. There's always like these really good offenses. It's like, how can they do it? How can they be successful? And here we are. And so that's kind of what I wanted. Like, go out and find an offensive coordinator in one of those conferences, or maybe you could snatch a Power 5 offensive coordinator from another, team that's been decently successful, that has a resume, that knows what the hell they're doing. That's what I wanted. And of course, like, it didn't happen. We brought back Brian, and, at that point it was like, well, as much as we hate it, we got to accept it because there's nothing we can do about it. And then, yeah, our hope is that like things do change with these transfers, and, everything they were saying in the offseason, how, we're going to be throwing the ball more. We're going to, open the playbook more, and things are going to be different. It's been like that way for years, and we keep getting sucked in as fans. Maybe not everybody. The ones that haven't, you're smart. I know I have. I admit it. And I need to get to the point where it's like, I just cannot believe anything that they say. The players, the coaches, nobody. And just wait to see to believe. So I don't know. That's where I'm at. It sucks that we're 4 weeks into the season and we're already kind of like saying, well, really nothing we can do now. We got to wait till the end of the season, because we said it all last year. And then, of course, everything was the same. So it's like, when does this end? How does this end? If I was Kirk right now, you're not going to fire or get rid of your son middle of the season. But if I was Kirk, I would say, okay, ditch whatever we're doing. We got to open the playbook. We got to do something different. We got to be more, I don't know, just whatever we can do. And I know it's hard because you're in the middle of the season, but like, there has to be something we can do better. There has to be something that we could do differently to just get this thing rolling a little bit because, like I said, it's just I feel like this is like a do or die year for Iowa. If it ends up being another laughingstock, another embarrassment on offense, which so far it is, and if things don't change, it's going to continue. How are we going to keep any of these guys, any of these playmakers on offense, from the wide receivers to maybe even Caleb Johnson, Jazz? Like, how are we going to keep some of these guys, even Cade maybe? Like, how do we keep them? And then how do we bring in people if those guys do leave or we do need to bring someone more in? How do we keep those guys or get those guys to come here? Because they have the receipts. They see how pathetic it is. I mean, we have become a national laughingstock. We have been an embarrassing offensive team, and you go on any social media platform, you go on any podcast, we are like one of the number one topics because it's easy to talk about and it looks so bad, and we put it all on ourselves, and that's what's so frustrating about this. So at the end of the day, though, we got to move forward. What sucks is I'm to the point where, we could easily win the West, and we probably should win the West given the schedule, given we have 5 more home games. We only have 2 more road games and 1 neutral site game, and the Big Ten West is an absolute joke. We should win the West. Now, Wisconsin's going to be a really tough game, but to the point, though, if we make it to Indy, we're just going to have to face Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State again, and I'm sorry, but we're going to get blown out. It's been that trend. Ever since the Penn State game in 2021, we have been absolutely horrible against tough opponents. And it never used to be that way. It used to always be that we would play those teams very tough. Now it's like we get blown out every single time. And I'm sorry, if we make it to Indy again, I feel like it's going to be the same old story. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we do make it to Indy. I hope we have a way better performance than we did on Saturday. I hope we can change it. I don't want to be negative all year. I don't want that. Trust me, I wish we could make podcasts every single week and be as positive as ever. It's way more fun than being negative. And I hope that we can turn this around a little bit. We can maybe start creating some more positive headlines in the national media, trying to reverse a little bit of, what we have done. It's going to be tough because of how easy the schedule is. And, I don't think many people, even if we do look better on offense as the weeks go on, they will give us any credit because of the competition we're playing. But it's still one of those things where it can only help if we can start getting the wide receivers more involved. We can start opening up the playbook, be more creative, be less predictable, know how to do what we need to do on offense. We can start doing those things. Hopefully, good things will happen. So that will do it for this episode. We'll be back. Like I said, Tyler and I will record Wednesday night for Thursday, going over kind of everything and anything related to a little bit maybe about the Penn State game and then also Michigan State game. So look out for that. Thank you for listening. As always, go Hawks.